Muse for you, awesome websites without code.
Hey, what's up, Muser? It's John with Muse for You, here to help you build awesome websites without code. And in today's video tutorial, I'm going to go over the Burst widget found at museforyoushop.com. So it is the weekly update for May 7th through May 13th. I released this widget this week. So it's a really cool widget. You can add unique burst effects to your website, and it's very simple to use. You just add a widget. You add first, and then you add the widget, and you can have these unique effects on your website. Then I have a second example, and there we go. So you can do a lot of really interesting things with this widget. All right, so I'll quickly showcase where to access it. So I'll go to museforyoushop.com, and here you can click subscribe today, and here you can click subscribe now to get access to all widgets and templates I come out with for $39 a year. The Burst widget is right here. Here you can click add to cart to purchase individually, or again, you can click subscribe to get access to all widgets and templates I come out with for $39 a year. The preview page is right here, and I'll go ahead and read a few of the features that are included. So you can apply the burst to any element on your website. You can choose from various shapes for the burst. You can set the number of shapes within the burst. You can layer bursts on top of each other. You can have one shape burst. Also, I'll mention you can animate the burst on load, on click of the element, or on the viewport, which is the browser window basically there. And I'll showcase that as well. You can set the speed, delay, and easing of the burst. You can loop the burst. You can play the burst forward and then back. You can set the position of the burst within the element. You can set the transform origin of the burst. You can set the stroke color of the shapes. You can set the stroke width of the shapes. You can set the fill color of the shapes. You can set the radius of the burst, set the angle of the burst, set the scale of the burst, and the opacity. All right. And it's not compatible with IE. IE doesn't support really modern animations. So it's more for modern browsers like Edge, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and Opera. So yeah, that's basically it. There's a few widget options here on the left, and looks good. So I'll go ahead and quickly showcase how to use in Adobe Muse. So here I have a blank site, or I just have the text Muse for You centered here with the browser centering widget. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go to the library panel here on the right. And if you don't see the library panel, you can go to Window and click on Library. Okay, so I'll open it up. And here I'll type in Burst. And here we have the three widgets. We have the Add First, we have the Burst widget, and we have the Burst Shape widget. So here I'll click on the Add First. I'll click, hold, and drag, place here onto the website. And then I'll first work with the Burst widget, so number 2. So I'll click, hold, and drag, place right in there. And to apply to the entire page, what you can do is just type in HTML here. This is the graphic style name. And I'll start with this, and then I'll show how to apply to an individual element. All right, so I entered in HTML, and right away we'll have a burst with the preset options that are in the widget. So you'll notice this little burst here, and we'll play with this a little bit. So I'll go into the widget. Here you can set the shape. So we have the shape section. You can choose from circle, rectangle, polygon, line, cross, equal, or curve, or zigzag. For polygon, equal, and zigzag, you can set the number of points. So for instance, if I say polygon, it's going to have 5 points, and there's going to be 12 polygons. So I'll preview, and just like that, we notice the shape is a polygon and it's bursting. All right, so I'll go back into the widget. I can set the burst options here. I can have it on load, on click of element, or on click of viewport. I'll click on click of viewport and see how that looks. So I'll preview, and nothing happens initially, but when I click, every time I click anywhere on the site, the animation bursts. Okay, and it is set to loop, so it keeps repeating. Here in the burst options, it's set to loop. Here you can set a delay, the duration. I can set the duration to be longer, so the burst will be a little bit slower. It's in milliseconds. 1000 milliseconds equals 1 second. And you can set the easing of the burst. You can choose from these various easing options. By default, it's set to sign out. But you can work with a different easing and work with an easing that that works well for your animation. Okay, you can set the degree of burst. So for instance, if I were to say 180, it wouldn't be a complete circle. The burst would just be half a circle. So if I click, we notice rather than a full circle, it just is half a circle, 180 degrees. So you can play with that. I like it having it as a full circle, so I'll enter in 360 for the degree of the burst. And then we have these other options here. So you can set the position, the transform origin, the radius, the angle, and the scale, the opacity, and then the options for the individual shape properties. So for position, you can set the position if it's within an element. And actually, let me showcase that now. Let's say you wanted the burst to be within a specific area. You could just create a rectangle with the rectangle tool, and I'll make it a color just so we can see it initially. And then you can give this rectangle a graphic style name. You can change the graphic style name here. So I'll say area 1. And then I can click on the element and go to the graphic styles panel. If you don't see the graphic styles panel, you can go to window and click on graphic styles. Okay, and then here I'll create a new graphic style by clicking on this icon. Looks like a piece of paper with a folded corner in the lower left hand corner. So I'll click there, I'll double click on style, and I'll rename this to area 1, because that's the graphic style name that is in the widget, area 1. So now I can move this rectangle anywhere, and the burst will play within that rectangle. So if I click, we see it's playing within that rectangle. So that's how I created this demo page here. It's just a few different squares and rectangles, and I copied and pasted the burst widget and applied different graphic style names to different rectangles. And the rectangles I made black and the background black, so you don't really see the rectangles. But that's how I created this animation here with these different bursts. Okay, so yeah, you just apply the graphic style name to the element, and the burst will play in that element. So then you can go into the widget options, and for position, you can position it within the element. So if I say 0, 0, it will be the top left of the element. 50, 50 is the center. So we see the burst now plays in the top left of the element right up there. Okay. So I'll set it back to 50, 50. I like the burst within the center of the element. You can set the transform origin. This works well if you're rotating the burst, and you can rotate the burst by going to angle. And we have a start angle and an ending angle. So we want it to start at 0 degrees and end at 360. And the burst will rotate 360 degrees. So let's go ahead and see how that looks. So I click, and we can see the burst is rotating as it's bursting. Okay, so that's in the angle section. You can set the radius of the burst so it's larger. So the starting radius is 0, the ending is at 100. If I were to set this to 300, and I click, we can see the burst is larger. All right, by changing the radius to be larger. We can set the scale, so the burst will get bigger in size. So here, yeah, the start is 1. By default, the default scale is 1. Anything larger than 1 makes it bigger. Anything less than 1 makes it smaller. So I'll go ahead and preview, and I click. So we can see the shapes are bigger and the burst is bigger using the scale property. Okay. If you do get horizontal scroll bars, you can use the horizontal scroll disabler. So the burst, because the burst is going off the page and it's creating a horizontal scroll bar here at the bottom. So you can use the horizontal scroll disabler. It's another widget at museforyoushop.com. Horizontal scroll. So I can just drop that in and make sure we don't have any horizontal scrolling to the site. Okay, perfect. All right, so that's the scale property. I do like working with the radius property a bit more. But if you do want the shapes to get bigger as the burst plays, then you can use the scale property. Opacity is the visibility of the burst as it's animating. So it starts at 0 opacity and then it ends at 1. With the burst though, they fade out automatically anyways. So it goes from not visible to fully visible, and then it fades out. Like if I were to switch this to 1 and then 0, it would be fully visible and then it would just fade out. So if I click, fully visible, and then it fades out. The other way around, it has a nice little fade in, which I like. So I like the opacity to go from 0 to 1. All right, so I'll go ahead and preview, and I click, so it's a nice little fade in, and then it fades out. All right, so let me go ahead and change this back to HTML right here in the graphic style name, so it animates from the center, and then we don't need this element here. So we can just see it a little bit better. We can see it animates there. The radius is bigger because we changed the radius. Looks good. Okay, so let's go to the individual shape properties. So you can change the stroke color, the fill color, the stroke width, the radius, and the angle for the individual shapes. So if I were to, for the fill color, I can set it to transparent by selecting the swatch with the red line going through it. And then the shapes would be, would just have a border, and I could change the stroke width. So I could say, like, you know, start at 5 and end at 10. So there's a lot of really customization options you can do here. The radius is the size of the individual shapes. So I'll start at, let's do something really large actually. Let's start at 5 and end at 200 and see how that looks. And you can rotate the individual shapes. So I'll start at an angle of 0 and end at 360. So we're gonna have really large polygons, so I'll go ahead and preview. So I click, and we see the polygons are larger, and it makes for a really interesting effect. And they're rotating. So the burst is rotating and the individual shapes are rotating. So the individual shape properties applies to each shape within the burst. All right, and we see we just have a stroke, and the stroke goes from 5 to 10. I believe that's what I set it to. Yeah, 5 to 10. Okay, so yeah, you can set the stroke color, fill color, stroke width, radius, and angle for the individual shapes. You can set a starting stroke and ending stroke, starting fill, ending fill, starting stroke width, ending stroke width, starting radius, ending radius, starting angle, and ending angle. And then I have a how to use section, which covers kind of the main points that I'm covering in this tutorial. All right, so that's basically it. Those are the options. So let's say you wanted to add a shape on top of the burst, or you wanted to layer different bursts. You could, just go back to the library panel, and then we have the burst with shape, the burst shape widget, which is just one shape. It's not individual bursts or individual shapes. And a lot of the properties are the same, except it doesn't have the individual shape properties. It just has all the properties here in different sections, like the stroke fill, and then position. Yeah, the stroke fill and stroke width are within different sections. That they're not within individual properties because it's just one shape. So for instance, we have the shape to be a circle, and I'll change the graphic style name to HTML so it animates within the entire page. And I'll preview, and we see we have a circle animating from the center. It's just that simple. It's one shape, it's not the burst. If I click, we have the burst going. But as you can see, you can start layering different bursts on top of each other to get this effect here. So this is 4 different bursts layered on top of each other. The 2 circles are one shape, and then I have the burst widget with the different shapes animating from the center. So yeah, let's go ahead and work with this a bit. So I do want the shape to be a circle. Let's start the shape on click of viewport, so it animates together with the other burst when I click. And similar properties, delay, duration, sign out for the easing. You can set the easing there. You can loop, and you can have the shape play forward and backward if you'd like, which is the yo-yo option. Okay, so for the fill, I'm going to make it transparent, and the stroke we're going to leave just like that. The position we'll leave it 50-50, transform origin 50-50, so it animates from the center. Yeah, so we have the transform origin, the radius, angle, stroke width, scale, opacity, and a how to use section. So I'll leave the transform origin at 50-50, and let's make the radius a bit bigger, so I'll say 200. And yeah, we'll leave everything just like that. So we just have one circle bursting out. So I'll go ahead and preview, and if I click, we have the circle bursting along with those shapes. Okay. And because the burst is set to 3 seconds and the circle is set to 1500 milliseconds, their timing is a bit different. So let me just set the duration here to 3000 milliseconds, and I'll preview and I'll click, so they'll animate together. All right, it's just that simple. I can copy and paste this shape. I'll add another circle, a smaller one. So I'll go to the radius, set it to 100, and that's it. So now I have two circles. Oops, I have two circles, and one smaller than the other, so I get this interesting effect there. All right, looks good. All right, so I'll copy the burst widget one more time, and then I'll just add one more burst. So here we go. I'll add it down here. Or yeah, let me move this around a little bit. Something like this. Okay, and so we'll add another burst. Let's add a zigzag here. So I'll select zigzag, leave all the options the same, and I'll just change the radius to be a bit smaller. So I'll say 200. Okay, and I'll preview, and I'll click. So now we have a zigzag and the polygons there. Okay, I can change the colors. So I'll go to the individual shape properties and change the colors here. Something like that. And I'll click so we can see it a bit better. So the yellow doesn't really work too well with those colors, but you get the idea. It's kind of, it's really customizable. You can change all the colors and things like that for the shapes. All right, looks good. So that is the burst widget. I'm gonna delete this one here and just try with another shape in the same color. Let's do a line, and I think that should do it. Yep, so we have a line within the polygon. But yeah, it's really unlimited. You can do a lot with this widget. You could apply it to the center of the page. If I were to change on load, rather than on click of viewport to on load, it would start immediately. So I'm changing it to on load here, and I'll preview, and we see the burst starts immediately without clicking. And it's set to loop, so it just keeps looping, and that's how I created, this effect here. All right. If it was in a rectangle, so let me just apply the area 1 graphic style name, and so area 1, and I'll set the start burst to on click of element. Whenever I click on that blue rectangle, the burst will start. Okay, so I encourage you to experiment with the widget and just make really cool bursts for your website. And it could add a lot of interest to your website, and could be more engaging, and some fun animations and things like that. So here I changed them all to on click of element rather than on click of viewport. And when I click on the blue rectangle, so here I'm clicking on the site, nothing's happening, but I'll click on the blue rectangle and it animates. So you can have it when the user clicks anywhere on the page, or when they click on a specific element. Right, so I can move this rectangle around, I can pin it using the pin options. Oops, and I'll preview. So it's pinned to the right, so the user can scroll and it'll always be there. If I were to set this to white, if you do use a rectangle, it can't be transparent. So if you want it to blend with the background, just make sure that it's the same color as the background, so it can't be transparent there. Otherwise it won't be applied to the rectangle. So it's there, you just can't see it, so I'm clicking in that area and it just looks like it's part of the website. If I were to have it like this, I'd probably want it so the user clicks on the viewport, so anywhere they click it would occur, rather than having to look for that specific area. So I'll just change to on click of viewport, and that's basically it. So I click anywhere and we see it's animating. Okay, I can move it somewhere in there, change the pinning options, and that's it. So if you do want multiple bursts, different bursts, you would have to create a new rectangle and change the graphic style name. You can't just copy and paste the element because it's only the burst only applies to one element. So you would have to create a new graphic style name, copy and paste widgets, and change the graphic style name for those widgets. All right, so that's it for this tutorial. So I'll go ahead and preview one more time, and that's it for the burst widget. Looks good. So yeah, let me just change it to HTML so it's in the center. But yeah, you can really have a lot of fun with this. You can change the number of shapes. So I can do something crazy like 20 here in the number of shapes, and just have multiple shapes for the burst. Okay, let me change this to HTML here. All right. So now it's in the center, and let me delete this rectangle. Preview, and there we go. So we can see we have more polygons there because I changed the number to 20. But yeah, you can do basically anything you'd like for the burst. So the main things, make sure the add first is placed at the top, and then you can work with the burst widget or the shape widget and just work with the different properties there. Same with the burst widget here. So you can do one shape or multiple shapes. So you can have the burst or the burst with shapes. So in the graphics, in the library panel, you can type in burst once it's installed, and you have the add first, the burst widget, or the burst shape widget, which is just one shape. All right, looks good. So that's it for this video tutorial. To get access to the burst widget, you can go to museforyoushop.com, and here you can click subscribe today. And here you can click subscribe now to get access to all widgets and templates I come out with for $39 a year. The burst widget is right here. Here you can click add to cart to purchase individually, or again, you can click subscribe to get access to all widgets and templates I come out with for $39 a year. Here are the features included, a few of the widget options, and the community section if you had any questions about the widget. All right, and this video will be right here, so you can take a look at the video, this video tutorial here on the widget page. All right, so that's it for this video tutorial. Just a quick note, I have been working on quite a few things for Muse for You. I am looking at ways to, with this whole news about Muse, I'm looking at ways to transition my audience to an alternative. That's the most I'll say about that. I'm still going to be releasing widgets and templates, but I do want to have a nice transition for my audience so that you guys can continue to build awesome websites without code. And regardless what platform we'll be using, this idea of incorporating these scripts or incorporating this type of functionality that will transition over to whatever new platform I might decide to work with. So yeah, Muse for You, a lot of the widgets, they're using open source scripts, and that can be applied to any platform. So there will be a one-to-one relationship for the widgets, for whatever new platform I decide to transition to. So yeah, a lot of what I've been thinking about and working on is just what new platform I want to work with, and the easiest way to transition and to make it easy for everyone who's worked with Muse, the easiest way to transition to a new platform and the different things that I'll be offering for that platform. So it's an exciting time. The idea of designing websites without code is still an awesome idea. There's so many awesome scripts out there, and there's so many ways to incorporate it into a website. And that's kind of my whole vision, can you make some of these, like if you go to awards.com, like awwards.com, can we make those type of websites without knowing code, and it's possible, there is a little bit of a learning curve. A little bit of code definitely helps, just to know a bit of code, but to be able to use an interface to make these really slick websites, I think it's becoming more and more possible. I think that's kind of a cool goal to strive for, making it really easy for users to make really slick websites and use some of these more complex scripts in their sites. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with everything. I still like, making the tutorials and offering things for Muse, but I am aware that at some point we're going to transition to a program that's actively being developed, and that is actively being developed and progressing, and just makes for everything. It just makes for a more exciting user experience in the end, and more of a if we all know that the program is going to continue in that sense, not to downplay Muse, but the idea that it's going to not be here maybe in a couple years is it's not the most exciting thing. So we do want to work with programs that are actively being developed, and for me, that's the exciting part, to keep growing, to keep innovating, and to keep progressing this whole world of web design and development. So that's my 2 cents. I know I kind of went on for a bit, but yeah, that's just where everything is at. I will keep everyone posted with videos and everything like that. That's it for this video tutorial and kind of my little speech there, or my little talk about where I'm at. Thanks again for watching. Again, I do this to help you build awesome websites without code. If you like this video tutorial, you can subscribe below. Also, in the Show More section below are links to other resources and links to mo.js. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.
Muse for you, awesome websites without code.